Apparently the only thing keeping us from liberty is a few more ideas.
A few more ideas. I mean, it's so confusing, isn't it? So much going on, so much to say, and all of it happening so quickly. The pace of repression outstrips our ability to understand it, and that is the real trick of the imperial thought machine. It's easier to hide behind 40 atrocities than a single incident. But they have a fight on their hands, don't they? Our elemental rights are such a simple thing to hold, they will have to shake the galaxy awfully hard to loosen our grip.
Welcome to the Dialectic Dose. I'm your host, Austin Constantino.
Had the election not been rigged, I would have been out of here. I would have been gone. The radical left would have said, we got rid of him finally. But no, now they have me for another 4 years. We talk about that.
The only reason Donald Trump has the power to create this much chaos, to drive the market down and then straight back up and then back down again.
And the president's made it clear, we're going to go after them. The ones providing the money, the ones pushing the lies and propaganda, we're going after them.
In a world fragmenting under the weight of seemingly disconnected crisis, I'm here to connect the dots that others refuse to acknowledge. Today marks the beginning of our journey to articulate the systemic failures of our time, not as isolated incidents, but as symptoms of the same cancerous superstructure that has metastasized throughout global society. This podcast isn't about lamenting our condition. It's about understanding it, dissecting it with surgical precision, and ultimately overcoming it. Because we've been sleepwalking toward an abyss, hypnotized by the lullabies of consumer capitalism. And it's time to wake up before we plunge into the darkness. It's 2025. We're navigating the second Trump presidency, which has magnified the horrors of the first. Looking back over the last decade since Trump's initial election, we've witnessed an unprecedented unraveling. The systematic dismantling of democratic institutions, the emboldening of overt racism, and the perversion of identity politics, once a tool of the progressive left, now weaponized by the fascist right. These years have pulled back the curtain on the grand American mythology, the myth of meritocracy, the myth of the American dream, the illusion that we had transcended our racial struggles or that religious dogma no longer dominated public discourse. All these comforting narratives began to crumble when we elected a reality TV millionaire megalomaniac to our highest office. And then came the crescendo, a global pandemic during Trump's final year, the January 6th insurrection, a desecration of democratic process unprecedented in American history, and a nation increasingly fractured along ideological fault lines. The COVID-19 pandemic didn't just kill millions. It exacerbated our existing loneliness epidemic. It accelerated our dependence on tech billionaires to mediate our social interactions, and further commodified every aspect of human existence. We watched as the chasm between the 99% and the 1% widened into an unbridgeable canyon, with billionaires increasing their wealth by $3.9 trillion during the pandemic, while workers lost $3.7 trillion. All while being told this was simply the natural order of things, the inevitable outcome of market forces. The George Floyd protests laid bare that racism wasn't a relic of the past, but a festering wound at the heart of American society, a wound deliberately kept open to divide the working class against itself. The subsequent mass shootings, many racially motivated, demonstrated how easily extremism festers in a culture of alienation, where access to instruments of violence remains virtually unregulated, and where young men marinate in online cesspools of hatred rather than finding solidarity in purpose and collective struggle. But these domestic troubles are merely the surface manifestations. Beneath them lies a deeper pattern, one that connects the failures of American imperialism abroad, the catastrophic wars predicated on lies about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, the drone strikes in countries unconnected to 9/11, the humiliating abandonment of Afghanistan, echoing the retreat from Vietnam, the impotence in the face of the Russia-Ukraine conflict that continues to this day, nearly 4 years later. And perhaps most telling, the hypocrisy, condemning Russia's crimes against humanity while funding Israel's genocide of Gaza, now approaching 2 years of devastation. This is the American empire with its mask removed, its myths shattered, its moral authority in tatters. Here we stand in 2025, watching inequality deepen under Trump's second term as fascist movements ignite across the Western world. We see their tendrils extending into Central and South America, parts of Africa, the Gulf states, and even Asian nations like the Philippines and Japan, all aligning with Western hegemonic interests while crushing any popular movements that challenge the neoliberal consensus. What we're witnessing is the most vivid display of capitalism's contradictions in the modern age. A system that requires infinite growth on a finite planet, that needs poverty to function, yet claims to eliminate it, that preaches freedom while enslaving billions to wage labor, that celebrates democracy while ensuring real power remains with those who control capital. Yet we insist on treating these as hundreds of individually occurring crises rather than symptoms of the same superstructure, capitalism. I can already hear the pearl clutching and the scoffing. Oh, here we go again with the capitalism critique. After all, isn't capitalism just the natural economic organization of society? Workers selling their labor for wages in fair exchange with business owners, right? Isn't that just how the world works? How it's always worked? We're told repeatedly, there is no alternative. After all, communism doesn't work. Socialism doesn't work. We've seen their failures, haven't we? What a monumental farce. We've all felt it. A system fundamentally at odds with our humanity, our common sense, our very souls and sense of purpose. We've watched as everything becomes increasingly commodified, as society grows more alienated, as violence proliferates across the globe. And yet somehow, we remain convinced that this capitalist superstructure is both natural and the pinnacle of human progress. We fail to recognize our own ideological captivity. We've convinced ourselves that the global South, whether Arab, Asian, South American, African, or even certain European peoples, they're somehow backward because they lack our particular brand of progress. We've internalized the colonial mindset so thoroughly that we can't even perceive it as ideology. To us, it's simply reality. After all, we tell ourselves, we have Uber and Lyft and DoorDash. We have Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. We have Hollywood and streaming services, 7-Elevens on every corner. We can purchase food from anywhere in the world at the tap of a screen. Our lives are defined by consumption, and we mistaken this for freedom. But we never ask what this mirage costs, not in money, but in the Congolese children mining cobalt for our smartphones, the Bangladeshi workers burning alive in garment factories for our fast fashion, the Indonesian rainforests cleared for our palm oil, the Mexican workers exploited for our cheap goods. The thought doesn't even occur to us. We're too deeply embedded in an ideology that serves a system which exploits us at a slower rate than it does the rest of humanity, making us complicit in our own oppression and that of others. We are the frog being boiled slowly, while the global south is torched instantly. When evidence of this suffering becomes undeniable, we're told either that it isn't happening or that they deserved it because they were terrorists, anti-American, or fundamentalists, whatever dehumanizing label is necessary to justify their subjugation. They're primitive and backward, which makes their exploitation not just acceptable, but necessary for progress. And then we have the American left, those who consider themselves enlightened while remaining in complete service to the very capitalist model that perpetuates every inequality they claim to fight against. They believe themselves intellectually sophisticated, lucid on social issues, yet cannot comprehend that every inequality they encounter, whether based on gender, sexuality, economics, or environment, emerges directly from the capitalist superstructure. This is not an abstract theory. It's material reality. Patriarchy serves capitalism by devaluing reproductive labor. Environmental destruction is the inevitable result of profit-driven extraction. Racism originated to justify colonial exploitation and continues to divide workers who should be united. These are connections that can be traced, mapped, and quantified through historical analysis, economic data, and lived experience. And yet, when people dare suggest that the superstructure itself should be overthrown, they're quickly labeled as dangerous Marxists or naive socialists who believe in failed ideologies. It never occurs to these critics that socialism, quote-unquote, failed because it was never allowed to exist without siege, without sabotage, without constant assault from the capitalist powers. When has any socialist project been permitted to develop uninterrupted? When has any socialist revolution begun in a society not already devastated by centuries of colonial extraction? The answer is not once. So the self-proclaimed leftists of the Western world scoff at systemic change as utopian, while blaming radicals for the rise of fascism, failing to see that fascism is simply capitalism's immune response when challenged, its desperate self-preservation mechanism. All right, so how do we begin to fight this behemoth that has colonized not just our economies, but our imaginations? First, we must understand it with crystal clarity. To understand an enemy, you must learn how it moves, how it talks, what disguises it wears, how it defends itself. You must articulate it precisely, name it without fear. Once you've defined the problem, you can develop viable, actionable solutions. But if we can't agree on what the problem is, or worse, if certain analysis remains taboo, if we allow capital to dictate the boundaries of acceptable critique, we can never address its root causes. We end up treating symptoms while the disease progresses. That is why we must wake up from our collective slumber, shake off the hypnotic spell of consumer distraction, and face reality with clear eyes. In this podcast, I intend to methodically detail the issues of our times and their inextricable link to the capitalist superstructure. I am not the first to notice these patterns, and I will not be the last, but I want to illuminate the work of those who elucidated this system long before any of us were born, from Marx and Engels to Luxemburg and Lenin, from Fanon and Cabral to Davis and Rodney. I want to tell the stories of those who fought against it, those whose ideas and contributions have been deliberately erased from our histories, dehumanized, lied about, and caricatured to remove their solutions from our consideration. I want to resurrect the revolutionary tradition that capital has worked so hard to bury. This erasure creates the illusion that if solutions exist, they must come from somewhere yet unknown, leaving us with no choice but to acquiesce to the present system, to accept the end of history. This is a lie, and I intend to expose it. Through rigorous historical analysis, theoretical exploration, and examination of contemporary struggles, the dialectic dose will dissect the systems we live under and illuminate the alternatives already being built in the cracks of capitalism, from worker cooperatives and mutual aid networks to indigenous resistance movements and solidarity economics. This is not just another podcast. It's an awakening from the nightmare of history. It's an invitation to see beyond the veil of ideology. And it's a call to imagine not just a better world, but a world we've been told is impossible. A world where production serves human need rather than profit, where democracy extends to the workplace, where the free development of each is the condition for the free development of all. Join me on this journey. The chains that bind us are mental as well as material. The dialectic begins now.